Here we go. Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. This is Neil with Portal to Ascension. Welcome to the pagan origins of Christmas and New Year's Eve. This is my third year doing this presentation, but this is definitely the first time I've actually put it out to the masses here. I sent out an email, as all of you in the Zoom room probably know, a few weeks ago, and we actually had 550 signups just on that one email for this presentation. So it's going to be a lot of beautiful high energy. Last year when I did this presentation, I just did it on someone else's platform, only had a few views. And the year before that, I did it to a very small group. So this is the first time that it's going to be on this level to so many people. And I'm very excited to share it with you all. I have actually added more to this information, to this presentation. Every year that passes, I make this presentation even bigger because there's so many different dynamics involved in this whole concept of Christmas, the solstice energy, New Year's, the shifting in the calendar, the Roman Empire, the second Rome, where we are right now. So I'm going to attempt to encompass as much as possible, but definitely we're only even scratching the surface because there's so much information, so many layers to fold back to really uncover when it comes to our true ancient history and how we became who we are today and how everything evolved to this point, all the different things that kind of assimilated and merged together to bring forth traditions and cultures and belief systems that we currently have. So everybody is leaving comments right now in the Zoom room. So I'm going to take a look and just like welcome everyone and see where everybody's from. And if you're on YouTube, go ahead and type in YouTube as well. Let us know where you're from and how you're feeling. Just check in with us. And happy solstice to everybody. We're going to be tapping into the solstice energy, and a lot of what I'm going to share today with the dates and the beliefs and the traditions and cultures and festivities, a lot of them actually occurred starting today. So it's the perfect day to really speak about this. All right, who do we have here? We got Renate from Arizona checking in, Eva from Chicago. We got Lily from Vero Beach, Florida. We got Louisiana in the house, Atlanta via Missouri. Let's see who the furthest away from me is. We got Monterey, California, Hawaii, Adelaide, Australia. That's probably the furthest away. Joan from Alberta, Canada. Welcome, Joan. Washington State in the house. Bianca from Germany, British Columbia. Michael from Australia. Hey, brother. Denise from Missouri. Another Australian in the house. Arizona. St. Paul, Minnesota. Bonnie from Florence, Oregon. Vancouver, Canada. Vancouver Island, Ottawa, Davis, California. And we got John White, the first time using Zoom. So thank you, John, for choosing to be with us for the first time you use the Zoom platform. That really means a lot to me, actually. And I'm really happy for that. We got Bozeman, Montana, New York, New Jersey, SoCal, right where I'm at. Awesome. Ohio, London, St. Petersburg, Florida. So with all of that being said, we're from all over the planet. I'm thinking the people from Andromeda and from Mars, they don't want to check in. They don't want to give themselves away. So we're just going to acknowledge that they're with us right now and just kind of observing like the alien in the corner. And what we can do is let's all synergize before we actually get into the presentations today. And here we go. Somebody from Sirius, Maury from Sirius. I knew you were out there somewhere, Maury. So thank you for checking in. And what we're going to do now is we're all going to take a moment here and take a few deep breaths together so that we can synergize and open ourselves to what we're going to experience today. There's going to be a lot of information, a lot of stories. It's going to be story time. We're going to go into the Roman Empire and what it looked like. As crazy and as totalitarian as Rome was, I just can't get enough of Roman information. I really can't. Probably had a past life there. So I've done a lot of research on Rome in general and ancient Greece, which you'll be seeing in presentations to come. But today we're going to paint a picture of the times of, from around the dawn of the millennia, 0 to 1 AD, up until, definitely the present times, but definitely for the first 500 years, from supposedly the birth of Jesus to around 500 CE. What Rome actually looked like then and what were the shifts and changes that occurred. So, but firstly, let's just all get comfortable in our seats. If you're laying down, whatever, just make sure that you're comfortable. And we're just going to breathe normally right now. Just take a moment. And after the next exhale, take a deep inhale in. Then let it out of your mouth. Another deep inhale through the nose and out of the mouth. One more time. Beautiful. All right. And I just have to give one more shout out to Eva from Arcturus. That's my home system right there too. So shout out to all the Arcturians in the house. Let's get into today's presentation, everyone. I just want to take a look at YouTube, acknowledge everyone in there. Hello, Kathleen, Dustin, Nakota, Higher Dimensions from Idaho, Magic Maid, Matthew M from Australia, Lisa, Tony, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And let's do this. Strap on your seatbelts. We're about to go deep into the ancient past and uncover some truths about how we got to this day of the solstice and the celebration of it. And then, of course, Christmas. So welcome to the pagan roots of Christmas, New Year's, sun worshiping, and the Christ consciousness presentation. These are just some of the topics that we're going to be discussing over the next hour to an hour and a half. And maybe at the end, we'll have some time for questions and discussion as well. We'll see how it flows. But these are some of the reasons why I created this presentation in the first place, right? How can the most celebrated holiday that is from a monotheistic religion, right, Christianity, even though the evidence suggests that Christianity and Judaism actually came from polytheism, not monotheism. It was one God chosen out of the many, right? How can one of these holidays, including Easter as well, but definitely Christmas, be connected to multiple religions with multiple gods? Aren't they supposed to be, or haven't we been told through fundamental Christianity and the Catholic Church that they're not even one and the same, right? So we're going to be exploring this topic. How did that happen? Why does Christmas have pagan roots? That's also one of the key topics of this presentation. Origin of the Christmas tree, presents, ornaments, Santa Claus, New Year's celebrations. What are the traditions behind them all, and how did they come to be what we do today, such as decorations during Christmas time? And then ultimately what it's all about, how does this all connect to the Christ consciousness? Because the Christ consciousness obviously has the word Christ in there, Christ being connected to Jesus Christ, being connected to Krishna, being connected to the entire consciousness of the planet. So what is the connection there? We're going to weave this in and out and kind of go to different areas and speak about different topics, and then in the end bring it all together to kind of paint a picture of what this means. And you're going to realize through symbolism, through many different traditions, all these things have merged, and we're going to attempt to explain it and define it as much as possible. But really, it's almost undefinable really to track the way all these things happen. All we can do is explore it and kind of come up with our own conclusions about it all, and just kind of be in awe really of the beauty of what it is to be human and how we have created these traditions and how we all connected. My friend Scott is here in the background, and he actually said from Radiance Magazine, some of you might know him here. Let's see him right there. Scott. And he was saying, what's the intention for this presentation, right? Just a few minutes ago. And it's really about exposing ancient history, our true world history, talking about psychedelics and how it connects to, our consciousness and spirituality, but then also to really show the interconnection of all things, how so intricately connected we are, cultures, religions, scriptures that we see and as so different from each other, that we live in this world of divide and conquer, that all these things are separately are completely separate from one another. Hinduism has nothing to do with Christianity. Hinduism has too many gods. It can't have anything to do with Christianity. It's a completely separate religion. One is of the devil, one is of the light. All these beliefs and things that we've kind of said over the last couple of thousand years, this presentation is really designed to break free from all of those beliefs and those beliefs and projections that aren't really true, because the truth is that we're all connected. We've shared stories over thousands of years, and then we've all adopted specific ones as we went along. So that is kind of the intention of why I created this in the first place. So as we know, today is the winter solstice. The winter solstice has been celebrated in antiquity, seen as a significant time of year in many cultures, and has been marked by festivals, rituals. It marked the symbolic death and rebirth of the sun. The Mayan calendar has a connection to it, and also the 3 days of darkness. So when the solstice hits, what happens is that the sun in the sky is at a certain angle. And we're going to show later in the presentation, I'm going to show you the angle of the sun during the solstice. And that angle remains pretty much steady for 3 days, leading up to December 21st. So the 22nd, 23rd, 24th. And then on the 25th, the sun starts moving in its angular momentum once again. 3 days of darkness, 3 days of stillness of the sun. And then what happens on the 25th? The sun resurrects, right? So it stops in the sky and it resurrects on the 25th. We have the resurrection of the sun. So that is kind of the what's happening in space, really, when it comes to the sun in regards to the winter solstice, which we'll get into more shortly. So here's some gods of the solstice, right? And I'm loving, like, I've actually had not done this presentation on the solstice before. So I love the fact that we're here right now together on this day. Ancient cultures viewed the solstice as a death and a rebirth, right? Death of the sun, rebirth of the sun, just like I outlined, often symbolized by the death and rebirth of the sun. This translated to the sun god of the respective culture. In many tribes and civilizations, the gods were the exact same, except with different names. And here are just some of those sun gods. We have the Greek god there. We have the Japanese god Amaterasu. We have the Norse god Baldur. We have the Roman god Mithras, which is very interesting. There's going to be a long story coming up soon about Mithras. The Greek god Demeter, who's also the sun god. We have Apollo, of course, that is also a sun god in Greek. We have Horus, which is the Egyptian god. And then we have Krampus, who's the son of hell, who is the Norse god of the underworld, right? I want you to really pay close attention to the words and the symbolism here and come up with your own understanding of this. Krampus, the son of hell, the name of a god, well, one L, the Norse god of the underworld. With the spread of Christianity, Krampus became associated with Christmas, despite efforts by the Catholic Church to ban him. And then also we have the Spider Woman in the Hopi, who's the sun god in that tradition. Then we have the sun's victory over winter's darkness, right? The sun's victory over winter's darkness. 21st, sun stops in the sky. 25th, sun moves again. The sun won over the winter's darkness and the beginning of winter. Other cultures that worship the sun as well, cultures and religions that have practiced prominent sun worship include the Incas in Peru, the Nabateans who built the city of Petra in Jordan, the Shintoism in Japan. One of the most important gods for the Inca civilization in South America was also the sun god Inti. So we have sun worship all throughout our history for quite, some time. And then if you are aware of the cycles of time and the Yuga cycles, we're only looking at the last 13,000 years, right? So chances are we've gone through phases and zodiacs over our 26,000 year cycles in which the sun is predominantly worshipped, and then another component of the skies are worshipped, and the sun god comes back. Like, for example, Judaism actually isn't a sun god religion. It's actually Saturn. They worship Saturn in Judaism. And case in point here is Elohim, which is another topic we're going to get into, is actually the gods of Saturn, translates into the gods of Saturn. So there's a Saturn connection and a sun god connection that happens all around the solstice. And then, of course, Apollo. Apollo was the god of practically everything, including but not limited to music, capitalize that for a reason, poetry, art, prophecy, truth, archery, plague, healing, sun, and light. Although Apollo is always associated with the sun, the original sun god was the Titan Helios, and I put that in there because if you look at a lot of the ancient pantheon of gods, there was an older sect of gods, right? Kronos was one of them. And then there was a new sect of gods that overthrew the old gods. Apollo was the newer gods. Helios and Kronos were the older gods. Zeus was one of the new ones, new pantheon of gods. So there was an original sun god that was Helios that was basically overtaken by Apollo. And this actually connects to the Pythagoreans and Pythagoras connection, in which I'm doing a presentation. I'll show you. It was supposed to be last week, but I moved it to January 15th. PortalToAscension.org. Scroll down there to the Pythagoras presentation for January 15th. And that's going to be a really amazing presentation on Pythagoras, groundbreaking information there. But Pythagoras, he believed that Pythagoras had a virgin birth as well, just like Jesus, right? And Pythagoras believed that the sun god Apollo had sex with his mother, therefore creating him. So he was actually through miraculous conception conceived, but the sun god was the one that basically seeded his mother. And then the Pythagoreans had two sects of individuals. They had the aesthetic individuals that were the ones that were into following this religious, spiritual, vegan lifestyle. And then there were the mathematici. The mathematici were the ones that knew about the secrets of how to build society, basically, all the secrets that Pythagoras had bestowed upon them. The mathematici became the Freemasons, and then they offshoot to another branch called the Illuminati. Now we have the Illuminati, the enlightened ones, the sun god connection, the bringers of light. So you see here how I'm just saying these words, but they're all connected. And a lot of it has to do when it comes to the Greek text from Apollo that went into the Pythagoras connection, that went into the secret societies that used the information that Pythagoras had, but they were also worshiping the sun. And here's the flyer for my presentation on the truth, life, and times of Pythagoras. Again, it's going to actually be the best presentation I ever put together. I'm not saying that lightly. The amount of information that I've figured out about Pythagoras, for example, he used to think that if you fart because you ate too many beans, you'd lose a part of your soul, right? But even though that sounds funny, when you learn about why he did that, it goes to a whole esoteric level that you can't even fathom. Why he was vegetarian, right? How he remembered 4 of his past lives. Lots and lots of information there. Again, check it out on PortalToAscension. So back to the Son of God. So we have the sun worshiping, right? Well, would you think that Christianity is a sun worshiping religion? Well, we have the sun, we have the Son of God. The sun God equals the Son of God. It was just translated into a different way, but the Son of God represents the same thing, especially the fact that we have this whole entire holiday of Christmas around the solstice that is literally a representation of the sun dying and resurrecting. Well, what happened to Jesus? The exact same thing. The sun stops at the same angle and it begins to move on the 25th again. Sun dies and reborn. The Son of God dies and is resurrected. There are a few theories in regards to what happened for the adopting of these different festivities in the Christian world. There's the Christianization theory. The major purpose for this was to incorporate a widely used pagan holiday to provide incentive and excitement in those who were being forced to convert to Christianity. The Catholic Church did not like the holiday, and devout Christians refused to celebrate it when it was first adopted. It was mainly celebrated by recently converted pagans. Eventually, Catholicism accepted Christmas. However, the Protestants held out for a much longer time. The Puritans in England overthrew King Charles I in 1647. So there was this whole time of not even accepting it, starting around 300 AD, somewhere in that time. And it was not accepted, but all the people that were converting from these pagan religions, right, started utilizing it, but it wasn't even accepted by mainstream Christianity. And then all the way into 1647, the Puritans in England overthrew King Charles I. And among the first items of what they did, after they chopped off the monarch's head, as you can see in this image below here of his head being chopped off, is they banned Christmas. Parliament decreed that December 25th should instead be a day of fasting and humiliation for Englishmen to account for their sins. Then New England, soon after, banned it at the same time due to the Puritans that actually lived in New England. So around 1647, not only in US, in the colonies back then, but also in England, Christmas was officially banned. Christianity hijacks Christmas. Pagan traditions and stories created the foundation over Christmas. And here's an example. We're going to get into a few examples here of different Christmas traditions and where they actually came from, the root of them all. So let's first talk about the origin of the mistletoe. Baldur, Norse god mother Frigga, honored Baldur and asked all of nature to promise not to harm him. Unfortunately, in her haste, Frigga overlooked the mistletoe plant, so Loki, the resident trickster, took advantage of the opportunity and fooled Baldur's blind twin, Hodar, into killing him with a spear made of mistletoe. Baldur was later restored to life, resurrected. Odin begged the god of death to revive his beloved son. When Baldur came back to life, Frigg was so overcome with joy that she declared mistletoe a symbol of love and vowed to kiss all those who passed beneath it. So the origin of this mistletoe and people kissing underneath it literally came from this story of murder and love. And Loki actually utilized mistletoe to make a spear to kill Hodar. And then he was resurrected. And the reason why we kiss under it now is that the mistletoe was declared love because of the resurrection of Hodar. And here is an image of that. Baldur, Hodar, Loki right here. And the spear made out of mistletoe. Christmas trees and presents. The use and purpose for the Christmas tree dates back to the times of shamans and mystics in pagan Europe before the conquest of Rome. During the solstice, shamans would collect Amanita muscaria mushrooms on December 21st, today, and leave them to dry on the branches of the Christmas trees. And here's an image right here of the shaman doing that right there. These mushrooms are actually naturally toxic, but they become less lethal when dried out. Conveniently, they grow most commonly under pine trees because their spores travel exclusively on pine seeds. So the shaman would often hang them on lower branches of the pine they were growing under to dry them out before taking them back to the village and handing them out to everybody there. And here is a Christmas tree with the mushroom on it. And here is actually the actual picture of the nature. Now, let's expose Rudolph for who he really is, shall we? While the mushrooms would hang to dry deer, while the mushrooms would hang to dry, deer would consume some of the mushrooms and get high of the fungi that they would urinate themselves. So as you can see this deer right there sniffing the mushroom would get so entirely psychedelic of this mushroom that they would actually urinate themselves into the snow. The shamans and other members of the tribe would drink the snow with the urine and get a tea-like mushroom experience. And as I said before, these mushrooms are very toxic, so they need to dry out. But another way to reduce the toxicity is through fermentation. So what happens when the deer eats the mushroom? It naturally ferments in their stomach, they pee it out, and it becomes less toxic, and they're able to actually consume it. This is believed to be the origin of the phrase getting pissed. That implies drinking urine from an animal or person who has consumed mushrooms. Rudolph is an evolution of an individual being so high of mushrooms that deers can fly. So just imagine this. The shaman goes into the wilderness on the 21st, picks the mushrooms that are growing naturally under the tree, knows that it's the best time because the sun stays at the same angle for the next 3 days, that it's the best time during the winter season to get a direct hit of sun in order to dry out these mushrooms. Puts them on the trees, the deer eat them, they'll come back, they drink them, they're high on mushrooms, and now you have flying reindeer. But who's this guy Santa, right? Who is this shaman that goes and picks these gifts from underneath the tree, right? Now, interestingly enough, we have Santa Claus putting gifts under the tree, but the original thing was he would go and get the gifts and go and distribute it to the whole community. So the original Santa was the shaman that collected the mushrooms. The mushrooms were actually the ornaments and gifts that was spread to the village. The deers were the way of transport. The original Santa was commonly depicted as more of a gnome-like little man, often skinny and a little scary. You can see the images at the below right there. Doesn't look like the jolly Santa Claus we know. Kind of more like a gnome, and a lot of times kind of looked kind of devilish and had horns in some ancient scriptures as well. So just to recap this right here, the mushrooms will grow naturally under the tree. The shaman, Santa Claus, will go and pick them. The mushrooms represent the presents under the tree, right? Because there were the gifts there. That's why we currently have presents. And then the ornaments on top of the tree were the mushrooms that were drying out, as we see in this one right here. Okay. And we see in this one right here too. And then we have the flying reindeer because of the consumption of mushrooms. And those are the premise of the most common Christmas traditions that we currently have. And of course, we have shows like the Smurfs, which are literally a representation of gnomes living in mushroom huts. That is actually, if you do any research and go deeper into this, is actually 100% connected to the Christmas story that I just shared with you, which is why it was made like this in the first place. That, you know, these gnomes, these little shamans going around from town to town, village to village, spreading the mushrooms. But how does this connect to elemental beings? According to Paracelsus and his subsequent followers, there are 4 categories of elementals, which are gnomes, undines, sylphs, and salamanders. These correspond to the 4 epidoclean elements of antiquity: earth, water, air, and fire, respectively. The concept of elementals draws from several much older traditions in mythology and religion. Common threads can be found in folklore, animism, and anthropomorphism. Examples of creatures such as pygmy were taken from the Greek mythology. So it's kind of a combination of different ancient folklore that combined into what we currently know as the elemental kingdom. And then we, of course, have the gnomes, and that connects us to Santa Claus. So elemental beings have been spoke of extensively in channeling info, right? Beings that are tapped into the consciousness and live in harmony with the earth, right? That's what's been shared a lot as well. It is said that they shifted into a different dimension or a dimension between dimensions to escape from the human violence and prejudice as humans were devolving in consciousness. So Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, so much more. You know how they show these elemental beings and Middle Kingdom, right? And from a lot of researchers and channelers and spiritualists, this realm of elementals does exist, and we actually used to coexist with them on our planet. You know, who knows how long ago? Could have been in the last 13,000 years, could have been hundreds of thousands of years ago. But what occurred is that the consciousness of humanity went to a level where we could no longer coexist because their frequency was not at the same frequency as us. But what does this connect to with mushrooms? It is said and experienced by many that ingest psychedelic mushrooms that they are connected to the consciousness of the planet, aka the Christ consciousness. Everything seems like it's alive and breathing. Even the chairs, even the tables, the trees, of course, but everything seems like it's alive. You can feel the fact that earth and everything on it is alive and thriving. This is where the crossover between the shaman and the gnome occurred. The gnome is the elemental being that can be seen when journeying on the fungus. And here is an image at the bottom right here of the mycelium network of how mushrooms actually work. And you can see that these mushrooms are actually connected to the trees and whatever is underneath the ground, but creates a network and communicates with other life that is also on the ground, not just by themselves, but the entire consciousness of the planet. And here is another artist's interpretation of that. You can see how these mushrooms here are going in the ground, but they connect to the roots of all the trees as well, and how able to have a symbiotic process where they're communicating with other plant life. Now, this is a map from of Earth and the mycelium network underneath the ground. So the network isn't just limited to little localized areas, but it seems like the spore network of mushrooms and fungi is actually across the entire planet. that it said that if you were able to do a cross intersection of Earth and look at underneath the soil, you will see that there is a neural network connecting the whole planet, and it will be the mycelium network of fungi, spores, mushrooms connecting and communicating with one another. Therefore, when you're ingesting a mushroom, you're ingesting something that is tapped into the collective, literally, because it's connected all over the planet, consciousness of the earth. That's where you have mushrooms equaling the consciousness of the earth, the consciousness of the earth representing the Christ consciousness. Now you connect that, mushrooms equals the Christ consciousness. So now we have that whole connection with Christmas, with the Amanita muscaria mushroom being harvested at that time, and how it directly connects to the Christ consciousness, which is also the reason for the season. And here we go. Here is the Lord of the Rings. Many truths hidden in plain sight within these movies. Even the battle between humans and the elementals, and how basically we weren't existing at the same level of consciousness. Look at the elf beings, right? How they left. The elves literally left from integrating and living with humanity to a whole other area that's almost like a portal that you can't even pass through unless you're like have a certain frequency level to even engage with them. But then they came back to assist humanity to conquer the evil that was coming to the planet. So many references there. Even connects to the story of Ravana, which is the story from the Ramayana in ancient Indian texts, where we have Ram and Sita, right? Ram being the reincarnation of Vishnu. We have Hanuman, who is the reincarnation of Shiva, and Ganesh, who's right behind me, he's also the son of Shiva. And then you have Ravana, and that whole entire story actually connects to Diwali, because when Ram went back home after conquering Ravana, that Diwali was the New Year's Day of India. So even that has a whole connection to what we're sharing here, because that story in itself represents the New Year's Day for India, which is usually in November, based on the astrological alignments. All right, so that was a detour right there. Back to Santa Claus. The roots of Santa's bags, gifts, sleigh, reindeer, midnight flight, distinctive chimney-based means of entry into the home, and even the way we decorate our houses at Christmas led to the ancestral traditions of a number of indigenous Arctic Circle dwellers. They connected, well, the names of these, the most predominant ones that have these stories and these connections are the Kamchadalis and the Koryaks of Siberia. Connected to the god and planet Saturn, Santa, also the Roman god Saturnalia. So Santa equals Saturn. What does that mean? On the night of the winter solstice, a shaman, Santa Claus, would gather several hallucinogenic mushrooms called Amanita muscaria, and then he would launch himself, fly on a reindeer into a spiritual journey to the tree of life, Christmas tree, which lived by the North Star, North Pole, and held answers to the village's problems from the previous year, psychedelic journey to release all past resentments, grudges, and live in peace within the community. So just say that one more time. So a shaman, Santa Claus, right, would launch himself after eating the mushrooms, flying on a reindeer, into a spiritual journey on the tree of life, the Christmas tree, which lived by the North Star, the North Pole, and had the answers to the village's problems. Why do I have this going on in my life? How do I transcend this? How do we live in peace with each other? How do I get over resentments and grudges? Take some mushrooms once a year and work it all out before the next season. Even Santa's outfit is literally designed like the Amanita muscaria mushroom. Saturnalia, a holiday in honor of Saturn, the god agriculture, was celebrated, beginning in the week leading up to the winter solstice and continuing for a full month. And we're going to get into more Saturnalia festival information in a second. Saturnalia was a hedonistic time when food and drink were plentiful and the normal Roman social order was turned upside down. Romans also observed Juvenalia, a feast honoring the children of Rome. In addition, members of the upper classes often celebrated the birthday of Mithra, the god of the unconquerable sun, on December 25th. It was believed that Mithra, an infant god, was born of a rock. For some Romans, Mithra's birthday was the most sacred day of the year. So let's talk about that a bit now. Let me go back here. What does Santa, Mithra, Jesus, and Saturn have in common? That's what we're going to dedicate the next 3-4 slides to. Okay. Why are gods, and then Krishna too, why are gods such as Krishna, Mithra, and Jesus said to have been born on the same day as this annual gift giving, December 25th? Right? Where did that come from? The name Santa Claus is derived from Nicholas of Myra, who was a very popular bishop living in what is now Turkey during the time of the Roman Emperor Diocletian in 245 to 313 AD, right? And I already have shown you some of the origins of the Santa story, but there were many other stories that all combined together into what we have today. So here's another one. This is the Christianization of Santa and giving someone else that name that combined with the ancient shamanic rituals as well. So we have Nicholas of Myra, right, around 245 AD. Nicholas was persecuted and tortured for his Christian beliefs. When Constantine converted to the Christian faith, he released the imprisoned Christians. This image below here is actually an image of Mithra, the god of Rome, the Roman god. After Nicholas's death, he was honored by the Greeks and Romans at an annual feast on December 6th. And on the eve of this feast, December 5th, they would give gifts secretly to each other, right? Another gift-giving tradition that connected to the ancient gifts-giving tradition of giving of mushrooms. When Christian Catholicism spread north, the Dutch started to celebrate the event. The Dutch pronunciation of St. Nicholas is Sinterklaas. When the Dutch emigrated to New Amsterdam, which is now New York City, the tradition was introduced to America, and the English version of Sinterklaas became Santa Claus. So that is the more recent conversion of Sinterklaas, which was St. Nicholas, which was originated from some shamanic rituals pre-Christianity that eventually became Santa Claus from the Dutch moving to New York City. To embrace the sympathies of everyone, the Romans moved the date from December 6th to December 25th, which was the birthday and thus the feast and festival of Mithra. The religion of Mithra and the newer Jesus religion had so much in common. There was so much in common with the religion of Jesus and Christianity and Mithra, and they decided to put it on the same date because we can all adopt them as the same exact deity. Both gods, for example, were born of a virgin. Both died and rose again after 3 days. Both had a sacred foundation stone. Mithra had Petra and Jesus had Peter, which is very, very interesting. Petra and Peter sounds too much alike for it to be so different and not just a pure coincidence. The religions of Mithra and Jesus had become competitive during that time, so it was a way to bring them together. These beliefs were just different versions of the same celestial events. The original festival of Saturnalia celebrated the birth of Saturn was also December 25th, all right? The Greek version was the Chronia, dedicated to Kronos or Saturn, and took place on the same exact date. The festival commemorated the reign of Saturn. Saturnia Day was Saturday, the holy day, and no work was to be done because Saturn rested after his birth and creation, right? Well, we're talking about pre-Christianity and pre-Judaism text, talking about Saturnalia coming from ancient Greece as well. And being a holy day, no work was to be done. Doesn't that sound very familiar as something that is adopted today from, not only Jews for the Sabbath being actually Saturday, but then Christians having their Sabbath on Sunday, which was originally actually Saturday, which connected to the god Saturn. But then we had the Judaism, which it was the god Saturn, Elohim, was literally their deity. And then we have the new god of the New Testament that becomes the sun god, the son of God. So we celebrate on Sunday. In the book of Exodus, a person was stoned to death because he was picking up sticks on the Sabbath, which is the day of rest for the Elohim, the gods of Saturn. So the festivals and our birthdays of St. Nicholas, Saturn, Kronos, Mithra, Jesus, Apollo, Helios, ancient shamanic rituals, and Sol Invictus all amalgamated to what we now have as Christmas, which is why, and all the ways that we celebrate the solstice and all the traditions that we have that are predominantly all over the world. There are different ones for different cultures that they have maintained their traditions. But what we have as a predominant culture around the world is a combination of St. Nicholas, Saturn worshiping, Kronos, god of time, Mithra, Jesus, Apollo, Helios, ancient shamanic rituals, mushroom ceremonies, and Sol Invictus all together as one. So Saturnalia, it was usually celebrated around December 17th to the 23rd, when the god Saturn ruled Italy and there was complete equality and no slavery, right? That was the whole theory of this day. Well, let's just say this, right? So when the god of Saturn ruled Italy, the Romans had this grandeur of the fact that they've always been around, and that when the god Saturn ruled their country, there was complete equality and no slavery. So on this day, on this time period, actually, the lavish hedonistic culture of Rome decided to let the slaves become the masters during that time and treat the masters as slaves. That was their fetish for the moment. They literally allowed the slaves to do to them all types of things because they basically got off on it. It was like the purge, and they would pretend to be the masters, and then the slaves would pretend to be the masters, and the masters would pretend to be the slaves. That was part of that tradition there. And it was supposed to represent a time of equality. So it was designed to balance all of the hardships that the slaves were getting. That was basically the theory behind it all. It provided them with a day to blow off steam, the slaves, right? Really used to reinforce slavery, though. It was really actually reinforcing slavery rather than focusing on the equality that the day should represent. Fast forward to today. What are we given? We have worked very hard. Life is about work, and then play is just on the weekends, or not even that sometimes, because you need a rest for a lot of people. And we are given holidays in order for us to blow off steam, so we don't get upset at the fact that we're just in this rat race, providing money, experiences, workforce labor for those who are in charge or who are elite. So what did they give us? They give us these days where we can have these holidays, so that these holy days, so that we can blow off our steam, so that we don't revolt. That was basically created by the Roman Empire, that whole concept. And one of the times that they utilized in order to help the slaves in society blow off steam so they wouldn't revolt on them was this time, Saturnalia. December 25th was considered to be the birth date of the Roman sun god Sol Invictus as well, right? So we have Mithra, we have Sol Invictus, and celebration of Kronos, the god of time, and also the god of the Titans or the giants. The sun is at its lowest ebb at this time. The sun is closer to Earth. Wait a second. The sun is closest to Earth at this time. Son of God, Jesus Christ, closer to Earth, able to reincarnate, resurrects on Earth. It makes sense. The reason why they even moved the Christian date to that time is because the sun, which is really a representation of Jesus, is actually closer to Earth at this time and resurrects after those 3 days of what is called darkness, but it's not really dark. It's just longer nights than the rest of the year. Here's an image here to show you at the angular momentum of the sun during the winter solstice. And obviously we're here today. And I just got to say one more time how excited I am that we're doing this today on the winter solstice, because it's literally like a presentation on it. So as you can see right there, there's you standing in the middle and the sun's over here. And for about 3 days, it stays at the same angle every single day. It's changing a little bit, but it seems like it's pretty much staying at the same angle. And then the angle starts going further and further down after the 25th, resurrecting. So here is an equation that I came up with. Let's get back there. Santa Claus equals Father Christmas. Father Christmas equals Father Time. Father Time equals Kronos. Kronos equals Father of Time. The Father of Time is the god of Saturn. Santa Claus and the god of Saturn, the Elohim, are basically interchangeable. Santa Claus, the origination and then the evolution of it, was always connected to the Father of Time. And then what does Santa do? How on earth pun intended, does Santa go and visit every single child over one night? He's the god of time. He's Saturn. Time slows down, time stops for Santa. What happens when you're on mushrooms? Eating Santa's clothes, his outfit, that literally represents that. You're connected to the conscience of the planet. Time slows down. Time is more fluid. It's not the same. All of this is connected. Again, Santa Claus is Father Christmas. Father Christmas is the father of time. The father of time is Kronos, who is the father of time. The father of time, Kronos, Elohim, gods of Saturn. So Santa has represented many gods, but this is only the evolution of Santa, right? Because as I showed you before, Santa had all these different components, Saint Nicholas, and all these other stories going on. But then this is the evolution of how we got to this current Santa Claus. So it would actually be backwards, this equation. But the Christian Santa, this was the immediate connection when Christians began adopting the holiday. However, all elements of Santa, including the pants, the hat, the bag, and more, all originated from the ancient pagan shamanic stories. In the 20th century, though, Coca-Cola played a role in rebranding of Santa Claus. He went from a gnome-like being that looked kind of satanic, Saturn, Satan. Let me say that again. Santa, Satan, Saturn. They don't just sound similar because they just sound similar. There's a lot of connections there. So the original shaman actually looked kind of like had horns and kind of like devilish. And then Coca-Cola came in and rebranded Santa Claus, and he went from a gnome-like being to a chubby, happy, go lucky Santa that we currently know and some of us love. So Santa's origin is based on psychedelic mushrooms, as many of the Christmas traditions are. Got to just drill that home one more time. Psychedelics seem to be utilized globally in ancient stories and in creation of ancient texts. For example, many people have speculated that the term manna in the Old Testament and the New Testament is actually a wine-infused mushroom drink that was drank, and Jesus actually drank it too, that would will activate your pineal gland and allow you to tap into the consciousness of the planet, receive downloads. And then also we have in India, we have the bhang drink, which is an infusion of THC, mushrooms, and milk. And that was Shiva's drink, right? And Shiva is the god that represents the third eye, and the chakra system and all of that come from him as well. So it's interesting that he would ingest bhang, which was a substance that would activate his pineal gland and excrete more DMT through the activation through this substance, therefore achieving enlightenment. All right, so I think we may circle back to some Christmas stuff in a minute, but we are pretty much done with the Christmas component here. We're going to get into New Year's Day, which really connects to this whole Christmas and solstice energy anyway. Here's a quote from Theodore Gaster in his book, New Year. There is scarcely a people, ancient or modern, savage or civilized, which has not observed it. In one form or another, yet no other festival has been celebrated on so many different dates or in so many seemingly different ways. Firstly, let me say, the connection to Christmas is a connection to the solstice, which is a connection to the sun. A connection to the sun is a connection to New Year's, because what are we worshiping? Or what do we, well, we was worship before, now we just celebrate it, right? We're celebrating a rotation around the sun, which goes to sun worshiping cults, and connects to everything that we just shared here. New Year's Day, the Julian calendar history. Christmas has been closely connected to New Year's Day since the days of Julius Caesar. The original date for New Year's, though, was actually March 25th. We can partly thank the Roman king Numa Pompilius during his reign in 715 BCE. Numa revised the Roman Republican calendar so that January replaced March as the first month, but it was not widely accepted or implemented yet. Since January was named after Janus, the Roman god of all beginnings, right? January, Janus, Roman god of all beginnings. March celebrated Mars, the god of war. Some sources claim that Numa also created the month of January. However, there is evidence that January 1st was not made the official start of the Roman year until around 153 BCE, which is around 600 years after it was first introduced. That's a long time. In 46 BCE, Julius Caesar introduced some more changes. However, following the fall of Rome in the 5th century CE, many Christian countries altered the calendar so it was more reflective of their religion, and March 25th, the Feast of Annunciation, became the common New Year's Day. So even 500 years later, around 500 years, 450 to 500 years later, even though January 1st was implemented as the beginning of the year, many Christian countries started shifting back to March 25th. And the 5th century, we still had quite a lot of entire countries using March 25th as the beginning of the year. The Christian world predominantly still celebrated March 25th until 1582. Okay, that's another 1,000 years later, right? So January 1st, until maybe the 16th century or so, wasn't really widely accepted globally. Well, even at that point, it wasn't a global thing because there were many civilizations that hadn't been conquered or fully integrated into the British Empire, right? At that point. So they had their own calendars as well. So Christian world predominantly still celebrated March 25th until 1582. It became clear that the Julian calendar required additional changes due to miscalculation concerning leap years. There we go. The cumulative effect of this era over the course of several centuries caused various events to take place in the wrong season. It also created problems when determining the date of Easter. Pope Gregory the 13th introduced and revised calendar in 1582. So in 1582, a new calendar was implemented. Side note here, taking a pause. Let's talk about the Mayan calendar. We can talk about the Celtic calendars, even an ancient tribe on the island of Ireland, and all had calendars that we have now found to be much more accurate and implementing this whole concept of an extra day within their calendars that predate all of this. So what occurred is that a new calendar was imposed from the Roman Empire based on their views of hierarchy and them trying to basically, a lot of Roman empires wanted to create something in their image. They literally wanted to shift things and be like the founder of certain things and did things based on what they thought was best for them. So as they did that, a lot of old ancient traditions that were utilized that were actually more accurate were actually put to the side. And then the Julian calendar was implemented, and for over 1,500 years, corrections continued to be made in order to figure out what was the best way in order to utilize this Julian calendar and then the Gregorian calendar in a way that represented the fact that we had an extra day every 4 years, right? So Pope Gregory the 13th introduced a revised calendar in 1582. In addition to solving the issue with leap years, the Gregorian calendar restored January 1st as the start of the new year. So that was part of the revised calendar. While Italy, France, and Spain were amongst the countries that immediately accepted the new calendar, Protestant and Orthodox nations were slow to adopt it. Great Britain and its American colonies did not begin following the Gregorian calendar until 1752. Before, they celebrated New Year's Day on March 25th. So that's even more recent. That's only around less than 300 years ago. And here, and this one right here is just a side slide, if you will, just to kind of talk about some of the manipulations that occurred along the time, and namely in regards to the Bible and the Council of Nicaea and what had occurred there. And let's say this quote first from the King James Bible, 1611. Thus said the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. Jeremiah 10:2, King James Bible. The King James Bible is one of the most manipulated versions of the Bible since the actual Council of Nicaea. The many different versions of the Bibles came out, but the two biggest points of complete manipulations and adding verses and taking out parts that weren't serving the current hierarchical societal structure at the time was the Council of Nicaea in the King James Bible. Council of Nicaea happened during Constantine's reign, in which he gathered all these bishops, and there's an image of it right here at the below, bishops and priests in Christendom together, all the ones on top of the hierarchy, and they basically got together and they brought together all the gospels, and there were hundreds of versions of gospels, and obviously there aren't that many in the actual Bible, and they took out parts that didn't work for them and they added parts that did work for them. Well, then that happened again during the King James Bible in 1611. So there were actually parts of those gospels in which Jesus never even died. There was literally versions of the gospel that was extracted in 325 AD where Jesus never even died and was not crucified. So part of the story is that some people believe that the whole crucifixion was actually an addition to the text during the Council of Nicaea and did not actually occur. Plus, there were two other books that were taken from the Council of Nicaea: the Book of Love, about the universal love of consciousness in God, and the Book of Reincarnation. Okay, two and many other books as well, but those are the two that I know of. The Book of Reincarnation speaks about how souls are eternal. And why would the Roman Empire want to remove your understanding that you have an eternal soul? Well, to keep control over the masses. So it's a great example of what was said right before all of the Christian world adopted the new year. All right. So some other New Year celebrations here. Since we're on the topic of New Year's, we're going to talk about other cultures and how they celebrated New Year's, and you can draw your own parallels and connections to these stories. So we have the Babylonian one around 4,000 years ago. Following the first new moon in March, right? So they had March as well. The Babylonians in Mesopotamia honored the rebirth of the natural world with this festival. Statues of the gods were paraded through the city streets, and there were ceremonies symbolizing their victory over the forces of chaos. There was also ritual and humiliation of the king on this day, right? So there was a ritual humiliation of the king on this day. Well, doesn't that sound familiar? That was what Saturnalia had become around 2,000 years later in Rome, in which they would literally change the roles, where the slaves were the masters and the masters were the slaves. Janus in ancient Rome around 2,000 years ago. Years of tampering with the solar calendar eventually established the holiday on January 1st. January carried a specific significance, the god of change and beginnings. Janus was seen as a symbolically looking back at the old and ahead to the new, and this became tied to the transition from one year to the next. It was common for friends and neighbors to exchange well wishes and gifts on this day. According to the poet Ovid, most Romans also chose to work for at least part of New Year's Day, as an idleness was seen as a bad omen for the rest of the year. Ancient Egypt. When Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, first became visible after a 70-day absence, usually in mid-July, Wepet Renmet means opening of the year. The new year was seen as a time of rebirth and rejuvenation. Discoveries at the Temple of Mut showed that the first month of the year played host to a festival of drunkenness. This was tied to the myth of Sekhmet, a war goddess who had planned to kill all of humanity until the sun god Ra tricked her into drinking herself unconscious. The Egyptians would celebrate with music, sex, and alcohol. And then we have the Chinese New Year that came about 3,000 years ago. And then we have Nowruz, which is celebrated in Iran by the Zoroastrians that, eventually became the Persians. And the evidence suggests that this day was celebrated as far back as the 6th century BC, all the way to the 7th century AD. And so January 1st, like getting back to that, was utilized and put by different cultures, even put in Rome, but we went back and forth for quite some time. Not until around 1700s did we actually have this as a consensus as all of the Christian world, okay? Because as I said, some places weren't discovered yet. Some nations weren't conquered yet. Some places hadn't had that Christian influence yet. So they had their own calendars, but the whole Christian world adopted it to collectively in the 1700s. And the last place was the US, Americas. And then after that, as the calendar swept across the planet and colonization continued, then all the calendar was implemented and imposed on all the other indigenous cultures as well. circling back to the sun worshiping here as we're closing off this whole entire presentation. So we can track back sun worshiping ritual in Mesopotamia to the Babylonian Akitu. So the story that I just shared with you about the Babylonians, and how basically there was a humiliation of the king on that day as well. So we can track it back, definitely going that far, but it probably goes back further. And then if you're aware of the cycles of time, maybe in a different cycle of time, there was also sun worshiping, but we don't have the evidence for those cultures because it was so long ago that they've literally been wiped from the planet. Christmas, solstice celebrations, New Year's Day, sun worshiping days, and then Amun-Ra, right? Amun-Ra, the Egyptian sun god. So obviously we've been worshiping the sun for quite some time. However, in many ancient texts, there are multiple gods, right? In the Roman text, in the Mayan text, in the Egyptian culture, right? Amun-Ra was one god out of many gods. And during their whole entire existence, different cults would worship different gods. Some wouldn't even worship the sun god. But then we got to a phase for the last 2,000 years where we left all these other deities, where we could choose which ones that we were directing our energy towards, and we went to 100% sun worshiping Christianity, Son of God. Obviously that's a blanket statement because there are many religions on the world, but I'm talking about the fact that it has one of the biggest chokeholds over our culture and including our calendar. Like go to someone that's still following Hindu traditions of an ancient age, right? Vedic people. Well, what calendar are they using? They're still using the one connected to the sun god of the Christian calendar. Okay. So sun worshiping can be traced back, as I said, at least 4,000 years. Probably goes back even further than that. And then the sun god became the son of God. And we see in many ancient civilizations a movement to pick one god. And in most cases, it was the sun god or the god of Saturn. Sometimes Saturn and the sun god were utilized as the same god because that was even mingled, right? And a side note here. So you have the Son of God, Jesus. The Son of God walks on water. That is actually a metaphoric representation of the sun and the sun rays reflecting over the ocean. So even that is a metaphor for the sun and the solstice energies. In pre-Christianity, sun worshiping, even though there was sun worship that may have been the main god, different gods worship different gods worship different people, different cultures worship different gods at different times. They would rise and they would fall. Even though we may think that polytheistic civilizations may have worshipped the sun, we worship the sun more now than ever. And the majority of people on the planet are blind to this fact because it's done in metaphors. The Son of God, Jesus, we personified the sun as these individuals, where we're not even realizing that what we're really doing is worshiping the sun, which makes sense because the sun gives us life. It gives us energy. It makes the plants grow. It gives us daylight, right? So that was the original intention for even worshiping the sun, because it was our Father's Son. It was giving us existence. The celebration of the New Year's is never once commanded in the Bible. Jesus and the apostles never even observed it. And Moses actually forbade it. So here's some questions now as we close up this presentation. Will there be a day where we stop worshiping the sun? And will the solstice celebration and New Year's Day celebrations go as we do that? Are we in such a time of blind faith that we follow things without understanding the true origins of them all? Why do we celebrate New Year's? Why do we celebrate the solstice? Why do we celebrate Christmas? And if we become aware of it, will we still celebrate these days, or will we change it to something else that's more encompassing, right? What will happen once we become conscious of how we followed everything blindly? Will it add more to this whole entire thing, or will we become more intentional with our energies, right? Instead of worshiping the sun, maybe we'll give reverence and gratitude to it, but not base our existence on its worship, because that's what's happened. It's okay to give reverence to something so beautiful as the sun, but to worship the sun, giving up your power to the sun, is where we have been at. We've been at this victim consciousness, the Kali Yuga, which has been known as the age of authority, the age of hierarchy. We've given up our power to a hierarchy that really is just one with who we are anyway. So as we shift out of this and go into the Dwapara Yuga, which is the Bronze Age, the age of energy, we start having a realization that we are energy. We are one with the sun. So worshiping no longer becomes worshiping, and it becomes reverence, just gratitude, right? So these are just things that I thought about, and the reason why I even wanted to put this presentation together in the first place. All right, and that's it, everybody. So that's my presentation there on Christmas and New Year's Eve. I'm going to stop my screen share. I'm going to show you one more thing in a second here, but let's take a look at the comments. Hope you guys enjoyed this. All right, I'm taking a look at the comments. Connection, you said?
Mm-hmm. Reverence and gratitude, but connection to the cycles of Mother Gaia.
So my friend Scott here says that he would say that what his would ponder on about what we're going to be doing as we shift and understand, what this really means for us is connection to the cycles of Earth, connection to the sun, connection to all that is. Would you say just like that's the evolution of this understanding? And I would agree. Like it's from worshiping from a place of this being more than me, and I'm giving up my power, and sun, please give me everything that I need. Son of God, please give me everything I need. If I worship you and do all these rites and rituals, will you give me this in return? That's where we've been for a couple thousand years at least, right? What would happen when we have a knowing that we have everything that we need is the universe just reflects it back. Something that I love to say is that the universe is just one big Xerox machine. It just reflects back what you feel that you have in your heart. If you feel like you don't have enough, it's going to give you more of that. If you feel that you have more than enough and you cultivate it inside of you, the universe will reflect that as well. So this presentation is really to like, I was way into Christmas growing up, right? Like Christmas tree, I used to have a Christmas tree here all the time. Christmas tree in England, lots of presents, right? And then I became awake in 2001, 2002. Then I went for like 6 years of like, one day we're going to ascend and Christmas will no longer exist, right? I was like, we're going to ascend overnight and there will be no more Christmas. But then I realized how it connects to mushrooms, Christ consciousness, psychedelic awareness, the winter solstice. And now I have a reverence for this Christmas season that I've never had before, that transcends what we've told on TV, what we watch on TV, what everybody accepts in the world. So just having this understanding gives me more respect. Well, not respect, it gives me more reverence and gives me more acceptance of the celebration that we're going through. And when I put a Christmas tree up, which we do every year, except this year I was in Mexico, I literally like imagine myself as the shaman putting it on there. And I'm like, whoa, how cool is this? I'm like connecting to some ancient wisdom of what we did for thousands of years ago without doing it blindly. It becomes so much more rich when you do these things without being blind to why you're doing them, right? All right, so since I have all of you here, I'm going to do a poem, which is connected to the Council of Nicaea and Christianity. But this is my question for you all, because I think this is a great opportunity to ask you guys this question. What topics do you want us to cover on Portal to Ascension? And this is going to go for the YouTube. This is going to go for live events, for paid events, for free events. If you could do me a huge favor right now, because we have a captive audience that can literally tell me directly some immediate feedback what you would like to see more of on Portal to Ascension, please go ahead and put it in the YouTube and put it in the Zoom room too. Do you want to see more topics on extraterrestrials? Do you want to see more events on sound frequency? Do you want to see more on ancient history? Is there certain ancient culture that you want us to explore more on? Do you want us to do more empowerment events that give you tools? Do you want us to provide more information and education? So if you can just take a few moments right here and just let me know so that I can integrate this into 2022 and we can make sure that we have more amazing things available for you, I'd greatly, greatly appreciate it. And Scott says ET contact. ETs always do well. I got a feeling there's going to be a lot of extraterrestrial stuff here. Okay, we got Nancy saying more ETs. We got Fairy Magic Power Realities ETs. Also saying everything I just said. Empowerment. Okay, come on, guys. Let's go. Divine Feminine. Okay, Pleiadians. I've always wanted to do a whole conference on Pleiadians. I'm thinking Probably 2023, I'm going to do a whole conference on different ET races, Arcturians, Pleiadians, Syrians, but Sacred Union. Anybody into Sacred Union stuff? 5D. Fairies. Okay, we got a fairies, folklore, and magic conference coming up in 4 months. DMT, Inner Earth, extraterrestrials, Earth elements, cosmic origins, star children, Egyptian connections, America. I gotta save this chat. It's like epic right here. The Galactic Federation, Middle Earth, Divine Feminine Masculine. All right, guys, you don't even know what's about to happen right now. I'm literally going to take all of these down, and within the next 2 years, I bet you anything, we're going to hit every topic. All right, ET races, feminine wing. Okay. Ancient medicines. Tartaria. Okay, we got something coming up in Tartaria in 3 months. Parallel realities, new earth. How to let go of what you know isn't the truth. Discernment, probably. All right, nice. Mud floods. Okay, we're doing a 6-month presentation right now with Michael Tellinger, and he's talking about mud floods in there if you're interested in that. Astral travel, empowering tools. Okay. Historical religious. Okay, so in other words, you guys all want different things and the same things at the same time. So that's pretty much what I'm getting from this, is that I thought there was going to be like one topic that was predominantly, but there's like so many topics right here that I'm probably gonna have to put it in some sort of Excel spreadsheet to figure out what's like the most that is expressed. Love is awesome. Love frequency healing. I'll say Reverend Dr. James, how to integrate the ego rather than kill the ego. New Earth and Ascension. I know. I want to know everything too. I'm like super curious. That's why I do all this. All right. Cool. Keep it coming if you would like to, guys. So I'm going to start the closeout process here. If you have any questions, go ahead and let me know. Yep. And Tim says, was March 25th the start of the new year because it's close to the spring equinox? Could be that. I didn't come across that in any of my research. I just came across the date, but not the actual reason why they chose that date in the first place. So again, when I learned all this stuff, especially the mushroom stuff in 2003, 2004, oh my God, like I was already into mushrooms back then, psilocybin. And I actually started writing a lot of my poetry because of my influence from psilocybin. And then when I realized that Christmas was connected to it, I was like, oh my God, I'm celebrating Christmas all year round, you know? Solar ejections and portals every opening 8 minutes. Well, what's Elvis Presley say? If every day was like Christmas, is that the song, Scott?
I don't know.
Okay. More mushrooms and Jesus connection and uses. Okay. All right, everybody. So if you're not on the PortalToAscension newsletter, please do go over to PortalToAscension.org, sign up there, and we will give you information about these events. And I always say that everything just gets better, but everything's just getting better. Seriously, like next year, 2022, the amount of things that we have in store, it's just incredible. Plus, we're going back to live events. October 7th, 8th, and 9th, October 7th, 8th, and 9th in 2022 in San Diego, California. The Portal to Ascension conference is going live. We got people like Foster Gamble. Let me read some of the people that it will be there. Adam Apollo, Michael Tellinger. So it's going to be a lot of incredible people. Celestine Starr, Laurie Spagna, Shreya Dharma, Joan of Angels, Robert Schock, Freddie Silva. Who else? And lots of other amazing people. But October 7th, 8th, and 9th, save the date. San Diego, California, we're going back to live events. It's going to be online, and it's also going to be, of course, live. Here we go. Some Elvis. Well, what happened? It went off. Oh, okay. Margie. Yes, Pleiadian Jesus. I'm down. Can you guys hear this? To tell that this is the season of cheer. All right, everybody now. right, let's take it off before I get a copyright for this video. All right. So I don't really have a comment on ashwagandha versus mushrooms. They're all good herbs, you know, and I don't think they both do the same thing. They probably have overlaps, but definitely each herb, we're given all these plants, mushrooms, psychedelics from earth and from source for a reason. And they all can assist us in different ways. All right, so I'm now going to do my closing poem here. Oh, let me just show you this real quick. This is Radiance Magazine, and Scott Ware, he's my friend that I showed you back here a second ago, well, an hour ago now. This is his magazine, and I'm actually featured in it a few times here, but my article is featured in it. Where'd it go, bro? After tomorrow, or? Okay. Here is an article, Radiance Magazine MM.
RadianceMM.com.
RadianceMM.com. And here's my article on Christmas and the magic mushrooms. So if any of you are interested, go ahead and go to RadianceMM.com, sign up to the newsletter, really epic stuff. And I write a lot of information in there as well. Okay. So last time, thank you, everybody. This is called Political Spirituality. All right, yeah, Margie, a whole entire presentation on Chronos. Okay, cool. So this one's called Political Spirituality, and it's basically about the Council of Nicaea, the manipulation of Christianity in the Bible, the Roman Empire. But then the second verse gets very galactic, you know, because it's truly transcends space-time and about the whole reason why this happened in the first place, right? If you look at Gnosticism, Gnostic Christianity, and you look at the original text before 325 AD, Lucifer was actually a volunteer. In the original text, Lucifer says, hey, well, God says basically, I need someone to come down to earth and give him the experience of darkness, right? And then the most trusted angel, the angel of light, raised his hand and decided to go down to earth to give us the experience of duality. That was in Gnosticism, the original text. So that goes into the whole concept of everything happens for a reason, and the darkness is actually working for the light. That we signed up to get this experience of darkness, and the darkness that we are experiencing is actually working for the light because it's given these light beings a whole entire reason to be here, which is to gain these experiences so that we can, in a world of amnesia where we don't even remember our past lives, we don't remember our extraterrestrial lives, we have this ego that gets inflated. But even with all those things stacked up against us, the ones that are here right now are like tuned into this, and so many other people, we're on this journey where we're still discovering the light and spiritually seeking, even though the universe, like the earth experience, this matrix that we're in, has really a lot of challenges for us to really accept and adopt and become those people. So that's what's the beauty of this experience here. So this poem kind of encapsulates it all in a metaphoric expression, and it's called Political Spirituality. The sun stops on the 22nd. It dies in the skies, reflects over oceans. He walks on water. Didn't you see him telling me how to be like he lived? He died for us, but there's no such thing as us. There's only one covenant. Feel me, show me, teach me. Since 325 AD, Constantine proclaimed himself a part of divinity, manipulations of Christianity, making us believe you can create order from anarchy, place me at the top of the elitist hierarchy, creating the Tower of Babel so we can reach God. Not separate at all, it's all crystal clear. Human flaws portrayed in a concept of divinity. Is politics intertwined with spirituality? Is politics intertwined with spirituality? Galaxies so far away, we intertwine planetary cosmic stargate to seek. Reach walls of society, spread word to the masses, exude gases of volcanic ashes, cosmic element irrelevant to the reason why. They will control your mind. With words of divine originality, originally believed to be one of the free rebels of humanity, it's a fallacy of superficial promises of rules and laws. Find the meaning for a truer cause. Scriptures and prophecies of the second coming of God. The new age will not be as hard. 1,000 years in revelations, with us realizing we are God. The rise in the feminine energy is due to us becoming brothers. One with the terrestrial mother. No more Jehovah, a witness knocking on my door. No more pimps and street corner whores. No more media manipulation, violence, and gore. So until that day arrives, I will meditate and concentrate my thought and my mind on a manifestation of one love, consciousness, and rhymes. So until that day arrives, I will manifest my thought and my mind on a manifestation of one love, consciousness, and rhymes. Thank you, everybody. I'm just going to tell you what I just said really quick, right, before we close out. So the sun stops on the 22nd, talking about the solstice. The sun stops, 22nd, it dies in the skies. It reflects over oceans. Jesus walking on water. He walks on water. Didn't you see him, Jesus, telling us to be how he lived? He died for us, but there's no such thing as us. There's only ever one covenant. So why don't you feel me? Why don't you show me? Why don't you teach me? Since 325 AD, Constantine proclaimed himself a part of divinity, didn't want Christianity to take over the world, didn't want Gnosticism to take over the world, wanted to figure out how he could still be hierarchy by hijacking Christianity. So they placed you and me at the bottom of the elitist hierarchy, creating the Tower of Babel to reach God, the Babylonians, creating the Tower of Babel because the gods had left. They wanted to go back to the gods. But why did the gods leave us here? Because we're not separate at all. It's all crystal clear. Human flaws, our own flaws, we portray in our concepts of divinity. It's politics intertwined with spirituality. It's politics intertwined with spirituality, right? That's what they did. They intertwined politics and spirituality and religion with one and the same. Did it change? No. Galaxy so far away where we come from. Planetary Stargate, going through the Stargate to seek, breach walls of society, spread word, the Jesus word, the Christian word, to the masses, volcanic ashes, irrelevant to the reason why we will control your mind. Now we talk about controlling minds with belief systems and everything. Originally believed to be one of the free rebels of humanity, Jesus again. Superficial promises of rules and laws, find the meaning for a truer cause, scriptures and prophecies of the second coming of God. The new age, where we're going, will not be as hard. 1,000 years in revelations with us realizing we are God. What is the Satya Yuga? 1,000 years long. What does Revelation says? 1,000 years of peace, right? It's all connected. The rise in the feminine energy is due to us becoming brothers. We'll be one with the terrestrial mother, right? So that's pretty much what it's all about right there. Connecting and reconnecting and realizing our true potential and our greatness, because we have these amazing human bodies that are vehicles that can literally tap into multiple dimensions, and we've just forgot it. And now it's time to regain these abilities that we have innate within our own DNA, within our own genetic code, and with our own consciousness. And that's it. So I just want to say thank you to everybody so much for being here and joining in on this presentation. Had a great time with all of you. And I'm just checking out the comments here. All right. Love you all so much. Thank you for being here with me. And I guess I'll check you next time. This is the last presentation of, okay, in about 2 hours, if you're watching the replay, it's all good. But in 2 hours, we're going to be live on the PortalToAscension YouTube. I'm going to do some spoken word for a 3-hour broadcast with Paradigm Shift Central. So for everybody in the YouTube, everybody in Zoom, at 6 p.m., 2 hours from now, we will be live for a 3-hour discussion with Paradigm Shift Central. I'll be presenting some information as well and doing the spoken word. So tune in there. Besides that, have a beautiful rest of your season right here. And we're going to go and hit the road running starting 2022 and just keep building up the energy because it's needed right now. How do we stay centered and how do we still have compassion and love in a world where there seems to be so much chaos outside of us? And together we can make those shifts so that we can really create the world that we know is possible. Love you all. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day. Bye-bye.